Hey, how are yous? Good to see everybody tonight. What is the crack in Kansas City? It's George Vile here with Brown's Irish Market. Going to do our whiskey live tonight, Saturday, May 16th. This is World Whiskey Day. We didn't even mean that when we planned it. Carrie and I always look at the calendar, pick 9 different dates. We see what figures out for each of us. And then, lo and behold, sometimes the dates we pick end up being amazing. Like, we landed on Father's Day by accident one year. I'm sure we landed close to St. Patrick's and Valentine's another time. But landing on World Whiskey Day, now that was good. We almost did it last week, but we were kind of running out of time. So World Whiskey Day, we have it. So tonight, we're featuring an Irish. We're going to be doing the Dingle. This is Dingle number 4, the single malts, absolutely beautiful. We're going to be doing a fun little Scottish. This is the Johnnie Walker White Walker. We're doing something American. We're doing our own Brown's Trinity Knot Bourbon. This is a fantastic little whiskey, just fun, fun, fun. And then we're doing something out of left field. We're doing a Japanese whiskey. This is the Shinobu. This is a pure malt. We'll get into that a little bit. But this is the Mizunara. So I put a little teaser out earlier for these. So if you don't have these exact whiskeys, you didn't get them from the store. If you have something similar, play along, you'll be able to do it, which is grand. So doing those. So if you were here for the last class, we kind of did a little whiskey 101. We taught you all how to drink, how to smell, how to sniff. So log back into that video. Spend 10 minutes, 20 minutes watching it, and then you can go back to this one. But we talked about how with whiskeys you want to take your time, get to know them, don't rush in. These are not wines at 14 so alcohol. These are whiskeys at anywhere from 40 to about 46 ABV. That's from about 80 to 90, 92 proof. So take your time, slow down, get to know your whiskeys. So the first one we're going to jump into is the Dingle Single Malt number 4. And this is special. So Dingle Distillery down in County Kerry, down little town of Dingle, little tourist village right on the coast. Most people would know the town of Dingle for the dolphin, Fungi the dolphin. If you've ever gone there, there's all kinds of opportunities to jump in the water, swim with him. Having a bad day, Fungi will make you feel good. Having a bad life, he'll kind of fix all your problems for you. And now Fungi's got a competitor, because with the Dingle Single Malt, that'll do everything Fungi can, but you don't have to get in the water. It's all there. So the Dingle Single Malt, we're doing the number 4. This is what we do have available in the store. It's a pretty rare whiskey. You don't see a lot of it. Number 3, we had like this much of it. It sold out immediately. Got the number 4 a few months ago, and as far as we know, we took every bottle that came into the state of Missouri, so we were very greedy on that. And when John called me up to say they were getting it, I was like, yeah, let's be a pig, let's get it all. So it's wonderful. I was very lucky to get a Dingle number 3 as a gift from a friend that went to Ireland, and this is a 700 CL, whereas the American one's a 750, so you get 50 more milliliters for being American. Isn't that great? So when they did the number 3, it was only bourbon and port, and then when they came out with the number 4, they went ahead, did bourbon, port, and they did some sherry cask maturation. So it's a step up from the 3. People love the 3. It goes for crazy money online. So does the 4, actually, because the 5 is now released in Ireland. But that sherry cask lifts it up a whole other notch. So let's talk a little bit about the Dingle, guys. So if you have it in your glass already, go ahead and start giving it some little noses and giving it some little colors, you know, just kind of getting to know it as I kind of talk about the distillery, and then we'll taste it together. So Dingle Distillery was founded in 2012, so it was one of the new batch of new artisan small distilleries. When it did open in 2012, it was now the 5th distillery open in Ireland at the time, because then we had the big guys down Jameson, Middleton. We love what they do. We had our friends up in Antrim, Bushmills, Northern Ireland. Then we had our friends at Cooley, and then Kilbeggan. And Kilbeggan was only doing fiddly little bits, but it was still up and going, so we do count that. So 2012, the guys at Dingle get the license, they open up, they start distilling. They started distilling, I think it was December 18th, 2012. They distilled, put a big dollop of whiskey, single malt, into barrels, and then they were very patient. They did it the right way, and then 3 years and a day later, December 19th, 2015, not cask number 1, but cask number 2, they went ahead and bottled it and sold it, and people went nuts. I remember it. I was following the stories online. I wanted it so bad, and it took several years to even get a number 3. They're just like gold, absolutely. And the guys at Dingle, like a lot of new Irish distilleries, there's several ways to go into business. You can open up, be a marketing company, buy some beautiful whiskey, stick it in a bottle, sell it with a great story. You can buy some raw and finished whiskey, sit on it, age it like J.J. McCrory is doing, being a bonder, letting it mature, doing your own blending, all that. Make great whiskey. But the guys at Dingle wanted to do it right, so they did the founders sort of edition where they sold 500 casks ahead of time to folks to finance the business. So while that whiskey was laying down, quiet, resting, aging down in Dingle, they had cash flow. And also they kicked up a beautiful vodka. They have one of the world's best gins. If you ever get a chance to try Dingle gin, it'll blow your mind. We've been waiting on it here forever, and it doesn't seem to be showing up on our doorstep anytime soon. So if you have Dingle gin, bring it to us and share. So anyway, Dingle itself, number 4. They're still very small production. They are up in their production every day. They used to only be doing like 2 barrels a day. I believe now they're up to about 4 barrels, 4 casks a day. Nothing huge, but they measure everything in bottles, so the numbers sound a lot bigger than they are. So I think they were like, oh, we started off at 7,500 bottles, and we're up to 13,000. And batch 3 was up to 20,000. Now they're up to like, 30,000 bottles. And then you divide that by 6 or 12, and that's not a lot of cases. In the whiskey world, where we have some companies selling like 1 million cases plus, a couple of thousand cases here and there. It's still artisan, it's boutique, and if you do get the opportunity, go there. Kerry and John were there last year, got some amazing pictures, met the guys there, very impressive. I can't wait to go there myself, haven't been there yet. So let's get into the flavor profiles on this. So being a young single malt, the wood characteristic is very prevalent in this. It's not going to have those rich, deep sherry notes that you would have if we're having like a 10, 16, a 21-year-old whiskey. What we have here is just very powerful. You're going to, with the expression of the bourbon, that's going to bring in that wonderful youthfulness with all the apple and the pear, a little bit of vanilla and toffee. Oh, it's just like that nice little warming sensation on the nose. And when I had the 3 first, one of the things that really drew me into it was one of my favorite characteristics in a single malt. It's that Ovaltine from the kind of crystal malt characteristic. I just love that flavor. It's kind of maybe some of you folks might think of the Tootsie Roll chocolate, like that kind of chocolate that really hits up nice. And then come from the port cask. So if you think about port, think about ruby port. It's a lot more fruit characteristic than sherry. Ports, deep and rich. You're going to get tons of red fruits, red berries, maybe a little blackberry out of this. Something you wouldn't get if it was just bourbon or just sherry. And then that sherry cask, that's what elevates it over the 3. It really brings it together. It takes all what you love about the bourbon characteristic, takes all that fresh red berries from the port. The sherry kind of brings it together and has this kind of nuttiness and almonds, and it dries up the bourbon, and it dries up the fruitiness of the port, and it just makes it gorgeous. So if you have a number 4, I think you should go ahead and take a wee drink at home. It's really something. It's gorgeous. For a whiskey as young as it is, it drinks way above its own weight. Drinking these Dingles, It's almost like drinking a unpeated scotch that's already had 8 to 10 years in cask. I just can't wait to see what more comes out of these guys. Little geek side note, they do a pot still that's not available in our market, and they also do cask strength versions of this, and those are for the Irish and European markets only. They only do 500 bottles of the cask strength, little ode to the founders, 500. So if you get your hands on one of those, jealous as hell. But for now, the fact that we've got Dingle number 4 and we get to drink it here in Kansas City, that's nice. One of the things I like to point out about Dingle, with their bottle, their packaging, like even the can it comes in, it's just got serious quality. A lot of the new Irish distilleries have kind of gone a little gimmicky, or maybe, you know, what they thought would be cool but wasn't at all, and I just love the Dingle stuff. You know, it kind of reminds me of the Balvenie guys. It's got a lot of the story and information on the label, but it's not in your face. Like, they're not just putting it out there. Like everything from the wee wren boy that's right up on here, you've got him back up on there again. You got this amazing picture of a guy out in the field working the turf there now, and you know, up forthright with information. It's triple distilled, marriage of bourbon, sherry, port cask, distiller's signature, stuff you might take for granted, but there's a lot of the companies that can't put this information on it because they didn't do it themselves. So the fact that they did it is very proud. And on the front, it's conceived and created by 3 independent spirits, and that's Oliver, Liam, and Pete. And unfortunately, Oliver passed away a few years ago, but the other guys, they keep the business going, and he'd be very proud of what they're doing now. So if you have that, drink up. I'm actually, speaking of Balvenie, I've got my Balvenie Glencairns out tonight. These are awesome. So a lot of folks will be asking, you know, is it worth the money? Is it, you know, it's about $100 retail, and then on the secondary market it's going for $200-300 for the newer releases. Batch 1s, batch 2s are way over €1,000. I say yes, these are worth it. These are amazing to drink. The powerful profile on them is absolutely delicious. If you're spending $100 retail and you're going to drink this week, you're in good hands. If you're also buying this to lay it down, collect it, or you're getting on the auction sites and you're hunting down the 3s and the 2s and the 1s and you're putting money into them, it's worth it. There's a little bit of Irish whiskey history. Imagine having, you know, the first ever Barry Crockett Middleton. Imagine having the very first Middleton Reserve, like all those whiskeys that were like, oh, I wish I got that, before they became thousands and thousands of dollars. So I would say, well, this is available, do it, jump on it. A little bit of history. Really good stuff. And one of the things I should have said earlier, since I'm pre-recording this like I did last time, but I'm going to post this and I'm going to answer all your comments live. So when I post this at 7 o'clock, ask away questions. I'm gonna be on there. I'll be typing away. I'll jump in. So if you have questions on Dingle right now, good time to ask. So doing all that. So after being total fanboy about Dingle, let's jump over now to something completely different. This is the Johnnie Walker White Walker. I love Game of Thrones. Well, right up until the final season, and like all Thrones fans, I think we rebelled. It was so bad, but I love Game of Thrones, and I think they did some really smart things. I know the guys, Ommegang Brewery up in New York State, did some and crazy beers for them, and then Diageo, who owns Johnnie Walker and owns a bunch of single malt estates, they did a great job. They didn't like jump on this, you know, in seasons 4 or 5. It was kind of held back for the end of it, and what they did was they took the 7 families of Game of Thrones plus the Night Watch, and they released 8 single malts, each in different styles, different price points. Some of our regulars and family members here at Brown's have actually collected them, and it's amazing. Like, they're just gorgeous. But then what they also did was they released Johnnie Walker series, a little more affordable retailness, probably around $40. We have it on special at Brown's, probably about $27, $28, so it's a great one to get. So one of the things I'm very proud Johnnie Walker did, because when you're a big company like that, you could just slap a shrink wrap onto your Johnnie Walker Red and call it done, and just, you know, it's all about marketing. But when they made this, they actually made it. And it's a blend, but it's a blend of exclusively of 2 distilleries. It's Cardew and Clynelish, and so we would call that like a vatted malt back in the old days. We would then maybe call it a pure malt 10-15 years ago, and they're not that common to see. Monkey Shoulder is the example I'll often give to people that the Grant family make, you know, from Balvenie, Glenfiddich, and Kinninvie, I think, is the third one on that. And so with Cardew is right down in Speyside. So it's that classic Speyside, which is that beautiful, big, warm Christmas cake, real easy going. It's that luxurious style, and that's why Cardew is used as a base in any Johnnie Walkers. Gives a great profile to build on. And then they go to one of the most northern distilleries in all of Scotland, Clynelish, and which is a little play on the whiskey itself being the White Walker. It's north of the Wall, way up there, Hadrian's Wall in Scotland, the Wall in Game of Thrones. And so with that distillery, they do a little bit of peat stuff up there, but it's not your Islay, it's not your Orkney, your Shetland style. It doesn't like blow you apart. So the stuff they put in here, it's actually unpeated, but it has that little more of a briny saltiness. So when you get the caramels coming, it's like salted caramel. And I just think it was really fun to do, and they did go all out in the packaging, because obviously they sold it to guys like me who are fans of the show, that we wanted to collect it and never open it. And but then they did want to sell it to whiskey folks, so they would open it and drink it and realize how good it is. They did this, what did they call, thermochromic ink. Say that 10 times fast. So with this ink, stick it in the freezer and it changes. Right here where it's blank, stick it in the freezer and it'll pop up "Winter is coming." And when it's nice and cold, his eyes will glow red. It's kind of cheesy, but it's fun. And when they made this, they kind of played on the whole non-chill filter versus chill filtering, because in artisan styles now we make a big yahoo, it's non-chill filtered. We leave all impurities in the whiskey. If you remember from last time, impurities equal flavor, so we want to keep that behind. But when you're making a whiskey like this, where you're designing the packaging to be shoved in a freezer, you want to have it chill filtered, otherwise it'd be all cloudy and gloopy when you pulled it out. So it's just another kind of little fun thing. So let's get into this. I really enjoy the flavor profile. To me, like under 50 bucks, this is one of the best bargains we've seen in a long time. It's got that classic, you know, warmth of a Scotch. You know, Irish, we always lean on that sort of delicate. We don't go over the top. Even our big bold Irish whiskies always have a delicateness to them. With our Scotch whiskies, there's just right away on the nose. Everything's bigger. Everything's rounder. It's like they feed their malt iron brew before they mash it and mill it and ferment it. I don't know, but it's always amazing. Love that. And it's got that kind of marmalade. You get the orange peel, you get the kind of jammy sweetness, and no peat coming up in the nose. There's just like a little bit of like a warm char, like I wouldn't call it smoky. Oh, it's nice. And they did a great job, and they did a few others. I think they did like a Fire and an Ice series too, and we did those in another tasting of Brown's. We did all 3 of them, and it was just fun to see. And everyone's got their favorites out there, and different critics, you know, go one way or the other. And this is one that actually a lot of the critics, they wanted to hate it because of the packaging and all the gimmicks and the TV show and all that. And then when you read the reviews, they're all like, oh, damn it, this is good stuff. So the fact that Johnnie Walker spent a little extra time and thought and put a good whiskey in it stands the testament of it. And so definitely, if you don't have one of these already, I would stop down to Brown's, give them a call, and pick one up while they have it on that good deal of a price. It is really nice. And oh, I should have said earlier as well, I'm wearing my Browns, my home shirt. I know we should be going into baseball season, like I was wearing my Royals stuff last time. But yesterday I was over at Ash Cigar Store, that new place in Parkville. Fantastic. Recommend you go over there and have a smoke. Those guys have some good stuff and a great lounge. But they were playing the Chiefs season, the Super Bowl champions, and I had just been saying the other day, it's like, you know, because of the whole, you know, stay at home thing, COVID and all that, kind of we're forgotten we're the Super Bowl champions. So watching that whole thing yesterday, sitting over there with my buddy smoking a nice stogie, it was got me really in the Chiefs, and you know, appreciating Patrick Mahomes. Crazy, you know, that kid nailed his knee and then came back and won it. Amazing. All right, so that was kind of fun. So we did our Irish, did our Scotch. You know, we talked last time how the Irish and the Scotch are kind of, you know, they're the parents. We might want to call the Irish the father, and the Scots are the mother of whiskey making. You know, without the Scots and the Irish, there would be no whiskey today. Uisce Baha, you know, being created in the British Isles millennia ago, being perfected over, you know, hundreds of years, going from a little monastic product into the secular, into the Industrial Revolution, and into the cities, and you know, in place of currency, it became a tradable item everywhere in the world, and we'd be lost without it. So in saying that, America has a crazy history with whiskey, with alcohol in general, but with whiskey, and that's going to be our third one. We're doing this here. This is the Brown's Bourbon. This is our Trinity Knot limited edition. We work with a local little company here in Kent City called Manos Wines. They do beautiful gifts, and they produce some of their own wines. They buy some great stuff from Washington State and California, and they do their own bottling. And so we had done a couple of Brown's wine bottles, and some of you folks have had them. I've seen some social media posting from all over the world, people bringing them there, and we love them. But we were talking to our guys down at Manos one day, and they were like, you know, we got a couple of casks of whiskey, bought them from the big guys in Indiana, MGP, you know, one of the top producers of bourbon and rye, and they've had it, and they've been sitting on it. You know, they bottle a little bit here and there for themselves, and so we talked to them. We sent a couple of design ideas over and back. Took us probably a lot longer, probably 3 or 4 months more time to get this perfect the way we wanted it, because if we're going to slap our name on it, we wanted to be something special. And so this Trinity Knot, it really popped out, and we, of course, our Casey Pride right there, and the guys that actually bottle this are the folks out in Olathe, Kansas, that they do the Clear 10, and they also do the Dizzy 3, the Roasteries coffee. They were the ones that actually bottled it for Manos. Good Spirits Distilling. Those are great guys out there, so very excited to have it. So when we got this in, you know, mostly what we sell is Irish whiskey. We do a little bit of Scotch, and we do even a smaller amount of bourbon at the store, but we do have a lot of folks that like to come in, just get something fun that they can just open, not think about it, not be too serious, but also make good cocktails. And this one is beautiful for making cocktails at home. So coming up to the summertime, like a whiskey and ginger beer, ginger ale, ginger liqueur, it's a great little mixer for whiskey as the weather gets warmer. And we do that a lot of times, the little bar down at Brown's. We just crack open a nice little can of ginger beer, put on ice, stick a lime or a lemon in it, and we get folks that usually wouldn't drink whiskey. Suddenly they're eating it up. They're having 2 or 3 of these, and then of course getting an Uber home. They would never self-propel. So this fit right into what we're wanting. But then for the folks that just enjoy their whiskey, a little sipper, I like this one with a few cubes. I want a little, not like your big whiskey cube that has no melt. I would save that for my nice Dingle if I was wanting to add any dilution. But for this here, just a couple of pieces of ice, let it dilute down, lower that ABV, smooth it out, and it's just gorgeous. It is 40% 80 proof, And it's just a gorgeous little one. It's feisty because it's a high rye bourbon, so it's got a little of that black pepper spice in it, but got your classic vanillas, you know, a little baked apple pie like your granny's apple tart, and it's got that nice sort of, you know, the baked in crust. You get that, and we love it. We don't have a whole lot left of it, and we'll probably not get the opportunity to make another batch of it. So if you do have one of these, good for you. Enjoy it, but if you don't, pop down this week or so and grab one of those. This one I haven't opened. This is one from my collection. I love it. It is absolutely gorgeous, but I opened one of the sample ones earlier, and when you breathe it in, you know, compared to the Dingle and the Johnnie, those were both, you know, that kind of warming Christmas cake marmalade like I was saying, whereas this here on the nose, it's a little more fiery spice. It's got a little cayenne coming in. It's got that black pepper from the rye and a little of the caraway as well, that kind of little licorice coming in. That's nice. But then it has those classic bourbon sweet notes, you know, like that candied red hot, where you take the cinnamon and you get sugariness to it, and that is just really nice. I enjoy that. I'm not sure how many bourbon drinkers we have following us tonight, but I did note earlier, if you're following along, to do a small batch or a single barrel, you know, be a very different animal. So this would be a nice equivalent for doing one of your bigger sort of traditional bourbons, like a Jim Beam or a Jack Daniels, and all that. Oh, I love saying Jack Daniels as a bourbon. It drives people insane. So Jack Daniels and bourbon, they call it Tennessee whiskey because the Lincoln County process with our maple charcoal. Anyway, bourbon and Tennessee whiskey, it'd be like having identical twins, putting a red pair of socks on one and a green pair of socks on the other, and then saying, oh, they're nothing alike, they're totally different. You know, it is the same thing, but you know, that's for another day. We'll get really geeky into that kind of stuff. But bourbon, you know, it's America's spirit. 1964 Act of Congress made it the distinctive American spirit, just as, you know, Scotch is to Scotland, Irish whiskey is to Ireland, Champagne to the Champagne region of France. It made it an identifiable liquor and product. And that was only 1964. A lot of folks forget how young the bourbon industry is. So the bourbon industry is one that's full of smoke and mirrors and funky stories, and everybody and their mom invented bourbon. You know, there's the Elijah Craig story, there's the you know, handful of who invented sour mash. And one of the things I like to say is, you know, nobody invented bourbon. There wasn't one guy. It's, you know, nobody invented Scotch or Irish. I think these things evolve, different styles, different processes, people's taste, you know, things come in and interrupt it. Like, you know, obviously the Civil War interrupted the growth of American whiskey. Prohibition really interrupted the growth of American whiskey. Prior to Prohibition, there was huge distilling on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains. Like Pennsylvania was probably the biggest producer of whiskey in America prior to Prohibition. But after Prohibition, you know, our friends in Kentucky really latched on to this story and mythology, and they were interrupted again then with World War II, but they persevered, and after World War II, the explosion of distilleries down in that part of the country really blew up, and they kind of made bourbon their own. Most folks you talk to these days, like, they'll even tell you, oh, bourbon has to be from Kentucky, and that's when you have to take a big deep breath and, you know, try not to be too mean, and you know, gently say, yeah, 95% of all bourbon produced in the US probably comes from Kentucky, but in reality you can make bourbon anywhere in the United States. We make bourbon here in Kansas City. Our friends at J. Rieger, they've made a bourbon here in Kansas City. Our friends out there at was it Union Horse Distillery, they've been making bourbon here for quite a while in Kansas City. There's great bourbons in Colorado, and there's bourbons in Iowa. You know, bourbon is American, not Kentucky, and that's why I often joke around. So the kids are above me. I'll have to yell up at them later. And So anyway, getting on my high horse about bourbon, but I love bourbon. When I was a younger man, getting into whiskey first, it was Woodford Reserve was the drink of choice when I was a young manager down in the plaza, and I sold a lot of it for the folks there, and I got to become a Woodford Reserve ambassador. It meant I got to go to a bunch of free tastings and stuff like that, but loved it. It was the sweetness, the easiness, and it was that sweet and hot that was easy to get. Didn't have to be too complicated, and that's what we still today we love about bourbon. You can get very complicated bourbons, but for the most part bourbon's pretty simple, and it's just good stuff. So and let me know in the comments how you like to drink your bourbon. Are you a neat person? Do you like a little ice? Do you do it with a stogie? Do you like it to make cocktails? Like we just had the Derby. We didn't have any horses run this year, but the with the Derby, folks love to do their mint juleps, and you know Woodford is one of the classics they use with it. They're one of the sponsors of Kentucky Derby. All right, now we're jumping into our Japanese. This is our fourth whiskey. This is the Shinobu. And this is fun. Okay, this one is complicated. So I did this for a whiskey tasting before the whole lockdown and quarantine. Did it a few months ago. And when I was getting to know the whiskey before the tasting, making my own notes and getting around it, one of the notes I put on here is most people are not going to like this because it's different, and it always takes people a while to get used to different. It's kind of like when I introduced the West Cork whiskeys for the first time. It took people forever to get around them because they were different. They were a different distillate of Irish whiskey. This Shinobu Pure Malt is finished in Mizunara oak cask. Chances are you've never had anything in a Mizunara oak cask. Even whiskey geeks struggle to find Mizunara oak cask matured or Mizunara oak cask finished. It's very hard to come by. So before we jump into the Shinobu, I'm just going to talk about the Mizunara a little. So Mizunara is a native oak to Japan. There it basically it translates to water oak. And it's a very slow growing oak tree. Like to be of a mature size to harvest it, it's got to be about 200 years old. Think about here in Missouri with our beautiful white oaks, we're getting maturity in 25, 30 years. They're talking 200 years. And it's very hard to get straight. They kind of like to twist and move around. Very hard to get straight cuts out of it to make barrels. So even after you do harvest a 200-year-old tree, you're not getting a whole lot of wood out of it. And then to make things even harder, it's a very porous type of oak. Quercus alba, the Missouri white oak that we use, has a very fine grain. It's great. It seals in. Even you know, a cheap, fast-growing Missouri white oak still got a good tight grain, watertight somewhat. You know, obviously you'll have evaporation and stuff, but with the Mizunara, it literally leaks like a sieve, and so they don't like to use it that often. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time to get a Mizunara cask going, and so even in Japan, their preference would be for American and European oak casks, and their little whiskey industry, you know, started growing after the 1920s, because prior to that, you know, they started distilling, but they were kind of copycatting. I think Yamasaki is our oldest distillery there, like 1898, something like that, 1889, you know, I don't have it written down, but around there. But in 1919, one of their folks headed off Scotland, learned from the masters, learned the right stuff, and brought back all that great knowledge of using the bourbon, ex-bourbon casks, using the European cask, you know, doing all that, using the right grain. And so coming up to World War II, Japan obviously ended up on the wrong side, some might say, and so their access to good European and American oak barrels got cut off, and so they had to start using some of their own Mizunara. And all the difficulties that I was talking about, especially the porous cask, didn't make for a good whiskey. People didn't enjoy it. So as soon as the World War II was over and everything was good again, they started using their European and started using their American casks again. But in the great distilleries like Nika and Yamasaki, they kept notes on this, and years later, other distillers and blenders working there would look at them and they see what they have. And what they found was the Mizunara casks that were now 25, 30 years old, that had already carried something else in them. They had, you know, sort of matured and seasoned out. They found then that those barrels actually were great for maturing whiskey. But you're talking, you know, extreme rare casks, because how many 25, 30-year-old casks were there? So Mizunara in the whiskey world over the years now, especially as our part of the world has embraced Japanese whiskey over the last decade, it's become legendary. Like if you slap Mizunara on anything, like the guys Banbridge, I think they're up in Portland, Oregon direction, or just outside of Portland, Oregon, Banbridge. They do a Mizunara, and it's crazy. It's $200-300. Never got to try it, but I hear it's amazing. Bowmore in Scotland did a Mizunara that went for $1,200. There's one of the new Irish whiskey distilleries. I think it's oh goodness, gonna escape me now. Is it Clonakilty? One, some of those, they've got a 13-year-old Mizunara. So Mizunara is very cool. It's very hip. It's hard to get. And like of course the Yamasaki and Nika stuff, if you can find any of their Mizunara, you're gonna pay a fortune for it. So now back to the one that we have tonight. So the Shinobu is pure malt. So pure malt means all malt. So sort of like the Johnnie Walker, it was all malt, no grain whiskey in there. And so with the pure malt, one of the things as well, they don't outright come and say it, but there may be some Scotch whiskey blended into this, because there is a kind of briny, smoky, little bit of salted caramel seaweed that's been burned on a campfire, little kind of thing going on. And because on the back of this label, because I couldn't find very little information about this, even on the importer's website, there's not a lot of information out there. But one of the things it says, you know, let me read it exactly there. It talks about, you know, of the sourcing some of the greatest whiskeys of the world. So it's not just Japanese whiskey in here. And so the master blender for this, Mr. Osami, who's very well known in the Japanese world, oh, let me get it here. Yeah, Mr. Osami, he would have put together this whiskey sourced from other people. So he's probably sourced some beautiful malt from Japan, but then a little bit of Scottish single malt probably made its way into this, and that's why there's the caveat. And they don't have the same rules as America, Ireland, or Scotland would have, that if you put some other countries' whiskey in with it, you couldn't put it as product off Scotland anymore, product off Ireland, but they can still say product off Japan. Their whiskey laws are just different. So the malts that comprise this were matured in bourbon and sherry casks. So you get a lot of the bourbon, sort of, it's light color, it's very delicate. This is no color added at all, so the actual color in this, you can see, is very light, and the darkness in there is coming from your ex-sherry cask, so it's just soaking up a little bit of that sherry that was probably still in the cask and give it a little bit of color, but it's not deep, dark, rich like a full, big, like a Macallan 18 mahogany sherry. This is just very delicate. And then it's only finished in the Mizunara oak, and the Mizunara, probably, it doesn't say again, but I imagine if they're doing finishing, 6 to 9 months in the Mizunara. So as rare and hard as it is to find that Mizunara, you know, I've read that those casks can cost up to $8,000–9,000. And I've mentioned before, you could probably call up World Cooperage and order yourself a nice bourbon cask for $250. Meanwhile, we're talking $8,000–9,000 for some Mizunara oak, which is pretty crazy. So then the Mizunara, what's it bring in? Because we know all about our bourbon flavors and our sherry flavors and all that, but the Mizunara, it brings in very subtle flavors. And this is why a lot of people, when they have something with Mizunara characteristic on it for the first time, it's very confusing. It's a different profile. It brings in a lot of citrus characteristic, and also they call it sandalwood. So sandalwood is a very aromatic profile. It's often the base for a lot of actual perfumes and aftershaves, and that sandalwood brings in a flavor that people just aren't used to having in there. And so when you build all this citrus and the bourbon and the sherry cask and everything that's coming together on top of that, the thing that it kind of reminded me when I was having this, it was almost like if you've ever had like an imperial IPA, where they've taken a big over hopped IPA, raised the alcohol through the roof, imperial style, and then probably aged it in a nice little soft barrel for a few months before release. That's what this whiskey was more like to me. It was much more in that sort of big barrel-aged beer than it was what we would want out of a whiskey, and that's what makes it so unique and different. So if you're willing to be open-minded and you're willing to look for something new and exciting, this is a great whiskey to add to your collection, add to your profile, and expand your knowledge. So this retails probably around 70 at Browns. So then if you like this profile, then you can obviously fork out a couple of $100 the next time you see another Mizunara matured whiskey or something like that. So all right, well, that was our Japanese. So just want to do a little recap then. So we started off with our beautiful Dingle number 4. That was our Irish, highly collectible, really drinkable, absolutely gorgeous. Then we had our Johnnie Walker White Walker, our fun collectible, Game of Thrones fans, but a delicious whiskey in itself. And at this price point, grab a few bottles, drink some, save some. I'm decorating my basement with some of them. And then we had our own little special edition. This is the Browns limited edition Trinity Knot. Great by itself, fantastic for making some home cocktails. Something I like to do, a very simple thing, is throw this on ice, orange peel, and get some walnut bitters. I think Fee Brothers make it. 2 dashes of that, boom, you got a cocktail made. Mixologist, look at that. Just kidding, I'm not. Well, that's going back there. And then our last one was the Shinobu, our Japanese Mizunara oak. Absolutely gorgeous, opening up a little bit of history, a little information, and I'm sure you just have a lot of questions about Japan, so ask those in the comments as well, and I'll do my best to answer them and doing all that. So one of the things before I finish off today, being World Whiskey Day, our friends at Redbreast back at the Middleton Distillery in Ireland always release something special, and today they released the 28-year-old Dream Cask, and we'll never see it, we'll never get it, but one of the things we can get is something rare like the Listowel cask. So on World Whiskey Day, we should actually just talk real briefly about Redbreast before we sign off. So last time we talked a little bit about Redbreast 12 year, readily available, one of the most awarded Irish whiskies of all time. Browns have it in stock, and Browns actually does have a limited amount of these Listowel casks in stock. And the Listowel, oh, it's amazing. It's non-age statement, 9 to 13-year-old pot still whiskies in there, bourbon and sherry maturation, but then exclusively finished in Listowel cask. And for fans of sherry, this is huge. It's just a wet slap of sherry in your glass. It's got tons of almonds. It's got like a little hazelnut cream, almost like a little Nutella characteristic. Oh, it's gorgeous. So for World Whiskey Day, that's the special day for Redbreast. So since we couldn't get a bottle of Dream Cask, I think Listowel cask would have to go. And that's got that wonderful pot still that we talked about last time. It's the malted and unmalted barley. Absolutely gorgeous. So anyway, I've rambled on for about 40-45 minutes. Sorry, take your time. Hope you guys were drinking along as I went. You know, I'm just here to chit chat with you and keep you entertained. We'll do a few more of these until it's safe to get together with all of us down at Brown's together. And one of the things we might do next time is maybe we'll social distance a few tables in the back field or the back alley. So when we go live with the video, we can invite some people down to drink the whiskeys with us there. Safe outside, away from each other and all that. So anyway, you all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining us, and put your comments down below. I'll do my best to answer. And you all take care. Slán go fáil. Bye-bye.